Greetings. My name is Dr. Randy Law. I'm the curator at the Southern Museum of Flight here in Birmingham, Alabama. Welcome once again. Got another video for you. Every office I've ever inhabited over my academic and museum career has kind of gone to seed. But this one, it's particularly chaotic because, like most museums, we just don't have enough space for collections, for the things that we store that we don't have out on the floor on display. So my office kind of works as an overflow collection depot. And so there's all sorts of, I mean, we could put together a museum just on, stuff in here. This is kind of cool. This is a dummy bomb, no explosive. They put a little charge here, so when it would be dropped on a practice run, it would hit and there'd be a bang and you can see what the thing hit. Pretty cool. Just haven't cataloged it or filed it away yet. Kansas, their second album, Mask, kind of an early prog classic. Not in our collection, that's mine. Long story how it ended up here. Speaking of Kansas, Amelia Earhart, a good native Kansan, world-renowned, famous early aviatrix, an extraordinary woman. Let's head out to the floor. So here we are in the early aviation gallery at the Southern Museum of Flight, and we do have a case on Amelia Earhart over here just as you come into the early aviation gallery. It's got a couple cool items about Amelia Earhart, a couple of videos range about her. She's really fascinating, but I'm not really here to talk about Amelia Earhart. I want to talk about a plane flown by a good friend of Amelia Earhart, and we are in front of one of our pride and joys here at the Southern Museum of Flight. This is a 1927 Alexander Eaglerock Longwing. So the aircraft was built by Alexander Aircraft Corporation, which was founded by a fellow named J. Don Alexander in 1925. He owned a company, a film company, that filmed advertisements that were shown during the intermission of feature films in the 1920s. And he made a boatload of money doing it. He wanted to expand his work into using aircraft for advertisements, which I assume means flying banners and such. And he went to several different aircraft manufacturers and talked to them about building aircraft for him to use, and they kind of laughed at him. So he said, okay, I'll start my own company. And that's exactly what he did, Alexander Aircraft Corporation. He started it in Colorado and in a small town north of Denver. And they started building the Alexander Eaglerock in 1927. They built about 100 of them, I believe, until there was a catastrophic fire at the plant, the manufacturing plant. The chemical, the doping chemical, cellulose nitrate, that they used to, a lacquer to coat the fabric on the aircraft, highly flammable. It caught fire. The conflagration spread. 11 seamstresses burned to death in the factory fire. And Alexander and his business partners were found guilty of manslaughter for all sorts of labor practice violations. They got off for the equivalent of a $20,000 fine today, suspended sentence. Well, they couldn't keep manufacturing. They couldn't reopen a plant there, so they moved down south to Colorado Springs, Colorado. And they got back to building aircraft and built about another 800 to 900 of these. So they built about 1,000 different variants of the Alexander Eaglerock Longwing. From 1927 to 1932, Colorado Springs was home to the largest aircraft manufacturing company in the world, largest output anywhere in the world in the late 1920s. So that's in and of itself a pretty interesting story. This is the A2 variant of the Eaglerock, meaning it was powered by a Curtiss OX5 engine. We actually have an example of a Curtiss OX5 over on the far wall there. The Curtiss OX5 was the first American mass-produced aircraft engine. So it's really kind of a legendary piece of equipment. They built over 10,000 of them in the aughts, in the teens. They stopped manufacturing them during World War I. Now, as big as the story is, it wasn't a particularly good engine. It was kind of temperamental. It was low powered. It was only 90 horsepower. But they built so many of them, and they were widely available on the used market in the 1920s. So there were a lot of aircraft, even that were powered by the Curtiss OX5, even after they stopped manufacturing it, just because there were so darn many of them, including one of the variants of the Eaglerock Longwing right here. It's a 3-seater open cockpit used extensively for barnstorming. The really notable feature, though, of the Eaglerock is the fact of the way the wings were designed. The wings were designed by this fellow named Al Mooney, who worked at the Alexander Aircraft Company. He goes on to become a very well-known aviation manufacturer and designer on his own. The Mooney Corporation, still a version of it is still in operation today. We've got a Mooney Mite on the other side of the museum. So before he was on his own, Mooney worked for Alexander. He designed the wings, and the 4 panels are all the same length. And so when the lower stretch is divided by the 2-foot wide fuselage, it makes the lower wing longer than the upper wing, hence its nickname, the Alexander Longwing. The idea was to reduce the wing load. Wing load is aircraft weight divided by the square footage of the wing size. So low wing load means low weight, large wing area. The idea was to increase maneuverability, more lift, more maneuverability, lower stall speed. You could take it off from a short runway. So it had a number of advantages, and one of these are some of the reasons why it was used extensively as a barnstorming aircraft. So this is why it's called the Longwing. One of the great stories about the Alexander Aircraft Corporation is that Charles Lindbergh actually approached J. Don Alexander in 1926 and said, hey, can you modify one of your aircraft for me to use in my upcoming flight? And Alexander said, no, I'm too busy. Well, Lindbergh went and worked with Ryan Airlines. Ryan modified one of theirs, and of course it was a Ryan aircraft named the Spirit of St. Louis that Lindbergh used for his May 27 first ever transatlantic flight. We actually have a model right above where you are watching of the Spirit of St. Louis. The Alexander Aircraft Corporation was done in by the Great Depression. So the Alexander Corporation only had a pretty short window during which it was very, very successful. I think it shut down in 1932 during the Great Depression. Assets were liquidated. Some of it ended up living other lives in other corporations. So Alexander only had a short period there, though, when it was on top of the world, but it produced beauties like this one. Okay, I remember there's a link here. back to a friend of Amelia Earhart, who's an amazing story in and of herself. Her name is Nellie Willhite. She went by Nellie Willhite. She came into possession of this Alexander Eaglerock Longwing in 1928, just a few months after she had gotten her pilot's license in around Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Willhite was the first woman to get a pilot's license in South Dakota. That's kind of an interesting footnote. But the really big story is that she was almost fully deaf. She was the first deaf person in the United States to get a pilot's license. And it's a pretty extraordinary story. I think one of the great things about aviation, beyond the intrinsic cool factor of planes, is that we get to use stories about aviation we get to use aviation to tell us stories about all sorts of great things. And of course, one of the greatest ones is the old triumph over adversity story. And this is a great one. She was almost fully deaf, learns how to fly, gets her pilot's license in January of 1928, and she goes on to become a barnstormer. She flew airmail routes for a little while. In this aircraft, and then in others after it, she gave rides, 50 cents for kids, $1 for adults. So she spreads the love about aviation in the late 20s and 30s. Meanwhile, showing people that you could overcome all sorts of obstacles if you really put your mind to it. She said that it didn't matter that she couldn't hear the engine. She didn't have to hear the engine to know if it was running right or wrong. She could just feel the vibration. So she used all of her other senses to overcome that limitation. You can read a much longer story I wrote about Nellie Willhite. It's in the March 2026 issue of Flight Lines, the news magazine of the Southern Museum of Flight. You can go to the website and you can check it out there, and you could read a lot more about Willhite's story. It's an amazing one. It's a very cool individual. Her father bought the plane for her in 1928, a year after it was built. I think it was $2,500 in 1928. She named it Pard, P-A-R-D, which was her father's nickname, and she put a 13 on the side, which was her lucky number, because she got her pilot's license from a solo flight that she took on January the 13th, a Friday the 13th, 1928. She obviously was not superstitious in that way. She only had it for a few years. She sold it in 1932. It was the Great Depression. It was just too expensive for her to maintain. It was owned by one or two other families from the 30s to the 50s. Eventually in 1961, this aircraft was purchased by a fellow from Alabama named George Epps. He bought it from a family in South Dakota, flew it back to Alabama in 1961, and then he and his family owned it for decades and continued to fly it quite frequently, as I understand it. He put it on loan to the Southern Museum of Flight in 1990, and then eventually in 2004, Mr. Epps very generously donated our Alexander Eaglerock to the museum, and it's been on display here at the museum for 30 some years, and it's one of my favorite exhibits, and it's always a real hit with the kids. And the story about Nellie Willhite is a really fantastic one. I want to make sure, though, when I'm talking about Mr. George Epps, he didn't donate just this. He also donated behind it the 1927 Ford Model T. So I love it. We've got this in a couple different places in the museum where we've got different forms of transportation, but of the same vintage. So you can see kind of what's the state of the art in 1927 in the air and on the ground. He also donated this up here, it's a replica of a Curtiss Pusher aircraft, which is an absolutely beautiful replica of the aircraft. The numbers are a little bit squishy, but I think there are only about 7 existing Alexander Eaglerock Longwings left out of the 900 or so aircraft that were built in the 20s and early 30s. So this is a rare aircraft. When it came to us, it was airworthy. We, of course, have not flown it for many decades, but at the time, it was one of only a couple of the only, I think, 2 airworthy copies of the 6 or 7 that existed at all. So it is a beautiful aircraft. Design elements make it really interesting as well. Powered by a Curtiss OX5, which is cool. The stories, though, that we get to tell, you hear me say this over and over again, the stories that we get to tell using these aircraft are what really hit home for me. Go to Flight Lines. You can read more about Nellie Willhite and her amazing story. Come on down to the Southern Museum of Flight here in Birmingham, Alabama, and we'll let you check it out. It's a cool plane. It's even better up close and in person. And you can ask for me, Randy Law, and I'm happy to show you around. Take care. I'll talk to you again soon.